today's tutorial, I will show you how to make one simple coaster pattern that can be taken 3 different ways. Stay tuned! Hi, this is Dana of Day's Crochet, and today I'm going to be showing you a variety of options that you can make with a simple pattern for coasters. I saw this really cute coaster on, I think, Instagram by, I want to say DeBrasi, New York. I can't say her name, I'm so sorry, but she's a fantastic crochet designer. And she made these adorable coasters, but hers were knit. And I looked at them and I dreamed about them. I can knit, but I really hate to knit. It hurts my hands, and so I thought, well, I really would like to make some, but I don't want to make a knit pair or a knit set. So I decided to create one in crochet. So the design itself, you know, of putting the wooden ring is not mine, but I did come up with the idea of using the seed stitch here, or the linen stitch as it's often called. So if you'll notice, it's really a tight knit pattern. I really just liked it, so I went with it. And then here, of course, in the corner, I attached the wooden ring. So I'm going to show you how to make this coaster today. And the beauty of such a simple stitch is you can get other styles out of it. And so this is the seed stitch as well, or the linen stitch, or the moss stitch. I think it's got a lot of names, but this is actually comfy cotton blend. I doubled it up and added some little beaded tassels. For those of you who know me, know I'm obsessed with beaded tassels. And I thought it gave it a real like beachy vibe. And then I thought, oh, I have been dying to make some items that are mixing weaving and crocheting, because I love to mix art mediums. I think it's fun. So I made this coaster with the technique of weaving yarn in and out of the chain 1 spaces that you see here. If you open it, you see a grid. I weaved the yarn in between the grid. So I'm going to teach you the concept and the things that I've learned along the way. So I did make these out of Bernat Home Maker Dec yarn, which is currently very hard to find because Bernat has not gotten more in their stock. So that is one reason that I used the comfy cotton blend doubled up. This is chai latte and the color whipped, I want to say whipped cream. I used these two here. This is the chai latte and this is the whipped cream. You can make a lot out of these cakes because they're huge. I got mine from Walmart for, I want to say $5 or $6, and I've made a purse out of it already, and that's what I had left over. So I used it because I liked it. And the beads that I used on this particular one I got from an assortment bucket at Walmart. It's called the Mega with bead assortment. It comes with a lot of beads. As you can see, I've used several, but those beads came in there in the assortment bucket. You can probably find them just about anywhere. Walmart also has little bags of beads that are, I want to say they have some that are wooden. And if you have a local craft shop, I'm sure you can find something like that. Those are fairly small. You don't want them to be huge because it's a small coaster. So this is a 5" by 5" coaster, and so is this. So you do not need big beads. You will also need, for that particular, you could use yarn because the holes are realistically big enough to make these tassels. But I always, with my beaded tassels anymore, use the Supplemax Monofilament illusion cord. I bought this from Walmart. It is a non-stretchy beading material. Also, I wanted to talk about these rings on this particular coaster. I bought an assortment bag off of Amazon of all these different rings. The size that I wanted to use, I had already stained. So unfortunately, that's what I had to go with. If I had my preference, I would have went with the natural wood. I think it would have looked better, but I didn't have any that size that I hadn't already ruined with stain. So if you want to know the exact size of this particular ring, I think they go by inner diameter, and this has a 1 inch inner diameter. So if you're looking for it in the store or online, you're going to want it to be, it might be close to a little over 1 inch. They probably will go by centimeter, honestly. Most people do in the world, except for the Americans. It's got a 3 centimeter center. I was going to show you, this is not the correct size, but this I bought from Hobby Lobby. So I know that they have bags of wooden rings at their store, but as you can see, this is almost 2 inch center. So it's not quite the right size. If I was making a pot holder, absolutely could use that. That would be perfect size, probably. Of course, you'll need scissors. You'll need a hook. I'm going to teach you the stitch multiples and the measurements. So it doesn't matter what yarn or what hook you use. When you are choosing your yarn, however, I do recommend thinking about absorption, because yes, they are cute, but you also want them to be functional. So if you are making these to actually use as coasters, I would consider the materials. Now, I love the Bernat Home Maker Dec because it's like a t-shirt type yarn and it's absorbent. So if I used this realistically, it would work as a coaster. And then also this Comfy Cotton blend is a cotton blend, and we know that cotton is very absorbent. It is a size 3 yarn though, so that is why I doubled it, because it isn't very thick. And I do want them to be functional. However, if you only have acrylic yarn and you really want to use it, then I recommend getting some cork coasters. Or you could, I think you can buy this in a large roll and then cut them to the size you want to save money. If you're making a large quantity of these to sell, that's probably the route I would go, because this can get kind of pricey. So if you can't get a hold of that, but you have some felt lying around, you could probably cut out the size and put it on the bottom. I don't know how absorbent felt is, so I would even double up and then sew it to the bottom. I've not tried this method, but it does make logical sense that something like this on the bottom would help it be more functional. So don't hold me to it, but logic tells me that should work. Also, of course, you will need a tape measure. Also, if you're worried about your ends becoming frayed, you may want some Fray Check, which I got from, I want to say Walmart, but I believe any craft store carries them. In this, you just would put on the tips of the yarn to keep it from fraying. That is the list of supplies that I am using today. You are welcome to use anything really that you would like. The yarns that I weaved in and out of here are often called eyelash yarns. So as you see there's one with a pom-pom on it. Then I've got a ribbon yarn that is woven through there, and then I've got a regular black yarn and a black eyelash yarn. But I will go into it more depth whenever I go over how that is made. So the first thing I'm going to teach you is the basic square, how to make the linen stitch in this particular pattern. So grab your hook and your yarn of choice and we will get started. So for this particular tutorial, I'm going to start with the wooden O-ring version. So you will need a 1 inch, like we talked about, wooden O-ring. That's the inner diameter. And you will need your corresponding hook. So since I'm using the Bernat Home Maker Dec, I am going to use a J hook because I believe that is what they recommend on the package. It's the size that I like. That is a 6.0 millimeter. So for the linen stitch, you need to make multiples of 2. So I think to make this exact size, this is 5 inches by 5 inches, I did 20 across. So go ahead and do the size that you want. I chained 20. I'm going to move this to the side. Now you're going to turn to where the backbone of this chain is pointing up, and we're going to work into those loops there. You're going to skip the first chain from your hook and make a single crochet. Now, after every single crochet in this pattern stitch, you're going to be chaining 1. Even at the end of the row, of course, you chain 1 and turn. So just remember that. You're going to chain 1 and skip 1. And we're going to make a single crochet in the next stitch. So again, we're going to chain 1 and skip 1 and put a single crochet in that next one. We're going to repeat this, and you see there's little holes there. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. Again, you could just measure. Just make sure that you're doing multiples of 2, and realistically, I mean, you could even triple up your yarn if you wanted to make it real bulky. Alright, so here I am in the last stitch. I single crocheted in that last stitch. I'm going to chain 1 and I'm going to turn. Alright, now normally this seed stitch is real easy from here on out, or the linen stitch or the moss stitch. Wish it didn't have so many names. So normally you just skip the first single crochet and single crochet in the chain 1 space, and then of course chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. But for this particular pattern, I didn't want any gaps at the bottom. So I did a drop stitch, and I know you can't hardly tell. They are slightly bigger than the rest. And that is because I did my single crochet into the skipped chain below. That way there would not be huge holes here at the bottom. That was what was bothering me about this stitch. I thought it was beautiful, but then I thought, well, I don't like these huge holes down here. And then I thought, well, I'll just cover them up. So that is what I'm going to do. You can do it where you have big holes down here, but I'm telling you, it looks a lot better without them. So I chained 1 and I turned, and now I'm going to, instead of making my stitch in this chain 1 space, I'm going to go in that backbone down below a chain that I skipped at the foundation there. So I'm going to put my hook from front to back into the chain space way down deep, and I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop for my single crochet, and I'm going to kind of pull it up to the same level here because it is considered a drop stitch. You don't want it to squish, so you do have to make it slightly bigger. And then I'm going to yarn over and finish my single crochet, and that just keeps the stitches tight. So I'm going to do it again. We're going to chain 1 and we're going to skip 1, and I'm going to go way down deep into the chain and make my single crochet, and this is considered, I believe, a drop stitch when you crochet into a row below. So see there, it looks nice. There's no holes. Chain 1, skip 1, and go into the back hump, as I like to call it, of the foundation chain that you skipped below. Yarn over, pull up your loop for your single crochet. You don't want it too big, but you want it to be level here. Yarn over, go through both. And I'm just going to continue this all the way to the end of the row, making my drop stitches, chaining 1 and skipping 1. It's a little difficult to do it this way, but the result is worth it. If I were doing any project where it would be obvious, I would do it this way. All right, here I am at the end. I'm still chaining one and skipping the single crochet, and we chained one at the beginning, or we skipped a chain at the beginning, excuse me, of the foundation. Remember we skipped one and then single crocheted in the second chain from our hook. We are now going to work into that chain that we skipped, and we're going to make our single crochet. And we have to do it this way because we skip one at the beginning. So this is to keep it, you know, from getting off in numbers. And this pattern is really easy to increase in when you're really getting fast and going at it. I've done it 100 times, it seems like. So I would count your single crochets, which are really easy to see because you dropped the stitch, right? So it should be 10, and it should never change. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Since I started with a chain of 20. So every row I would make sure that you only have 10 single crochets if you're making it exactly like mine, or the number that you started with, because it is very easy to put a stitch in the top of a single crochet and in the space. So take it from my experience. I've been crocheting a really long time and I did it a bunch. So you're going to chain one and turn for this next round or row, and this is where it gets really easy. You're going to single crochet in the chain one space below, and then you're gonna chain one, skip one, find the next chain one space and put a single crochet. Chain one, skip one, single crochet in the chain one space. And you can get pretty fast with this. You just have to be very intentional about making sure you're going into that chain one space. That's why I put my big fat finger in it. Because I don't want to accidentally go into that. See how big that hole is? That's the single crochet, the drop stitch. So you don't want to accidentally go into that single crochet, because otherwise you won't get the pretty pattern. And I want to say I actually did increase on this one. I can't remember. I know I took one of them out that I increased twice on. Just take my word for it, it's easy. All right, I'm at the last one here, and you're gonna need to, when you get to the chain ones that you do at the end of the row, you might want to do them kind of loosely because we are working back into those chain one spaces below. So be pretty intentional about it. It's kind of difficult. Okay, so now I recommend going back and counting your single crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I did not accidentally increase. My pattern looks nice. It's working the way it's supposed to. So you just continue repeating this stitch pattern where you chain one, turn, put a single crochet in this chain one space below, chain one, skip one, single crochet in the chain one space below. And it's simple, and it makes a really tight knit pattern, but also a really pretty pattern. And I've seen where people change color every row to really make those stitches pop, and I think it's so pretty. It has a lot of potential when you use it for something simple that's one color, or when you change colors, it can be really pretty. So I think that you've probably got it by now. So what I'm going to do is stop the film, and I'm going to meet you when we start to decrease. And for me, that is going to be row 15. So do 15 rows, and I will meet you back here where we start to decrease. Okay, so I've got 15 rows of my linen stitch done. And real quickly, I wanted to point out that I actually made a mistake in my first one that I made. I want you to look and see, these edges are really straight. Of course, this yarn is very stretchy, so it's trying to pull. But if you look at my demo one, these edges are rippled. The reason is because of my last single crochet of each row, I accidentally put it in the top of my single crochet instead of in the top of the chain one from the row before. So keep that in mind. If you are seeing this ripple going on, you are putting your last single crochet of the row in the wrong place. I mean, it doesn't look terrible, but it doesn't look great. So here it is straight edged, and to me it looks a bit better. Anyway, so we're going to continue on. This is how you add your wooden ring. And let me just say, this particular ring is the perfect size for a 5x5 coaster. If you're going to go bigger, I would consider going up in ring size. That being said, the bigger the ring, the sooner you are probably going to need to start your decrease. So I'm teaching you the principle here. If I were you, I would go ahead and try one this size before you attempt a bigger one, because it's a little bit challenging. So if you're looking at this one here, you can see that I started decreasing, and I only decreased for like maybe 4 rows, I think. And if I had a bigger ring, of course, you know, you would have to compensate for the size of the ring. So this is just a principle, and if you are making one bigger, just keep that in mind, okay? So to begin row 16, if you're following my pattern, you're going to chain 2 this time. We're going to begin our decrease. Turn your work. We're going to skip that first single crochet, that next chain 1 space, and the next single crochet. We are going to be single crocheting into the second chain 1 space from your hook. So all the way over here. This is the most drastic decrease that we're doing. See, it's already starting to go in. And then we're going to repeat our repeating pattern. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet all the way across, which you should have by now since you're on row 16. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet all the way across. And again, remember, skip that last single crochet and put your last single crochet in that chain 1 space to get that nice straight edge. Chain 1, turn. And of course, we're only decreasing on one side. So we are going to start row 17 the same as the other ones. We're going to go across all the way until we get to where we would put our last single crochet. And when we get to that spot, we are not going to make our last single crochet. So we're going to go all the way across row 17 until we get to that last single crochet, which is technically the first single crochet made in row 16. And we're going to put our last single crochet in the chain 1 space before it, and we are not going to go any further. So now we're going to chain 1 and turn. And we don't want to decrease too drastically. Basically, I'm actually cutting out like a square. I'm not actually going at an angle, and you will see why in a minute. So I'm not decreasing anymore, actually. So the only rows that you really decrease on is 16 and 17. Now for 18 and 19, we are going to just do the pattern as usual. Chain 1, put a single crochet in the first chain 1 space, chain 1, skip 1. Now if you do end up making a bigger one, you do want to end on on your decreased side, and I'll show you why in a minute. So this is my last row. This is row 19 for me. The only reason that I say to end on your decreased side is so you don't have to cut your yarn and rejoin. And so now I'm going to put my last single crochet in the chain 1 of the row below, because remember I said we only decrease on rows 16 and 17, and then we just continue on. Right quickly, I want to show you, it looks like a right angle here. So that is how it should look, and we are going to put our ring here in just a moment. So now we're going to chain 1, and we're going to turn to where that right angle is, where we are going to be working. And I'm going to make some slip stitches across this area just to make it look better. I'm going to put 1 slip stitch in each row, and then when I get to that chain 2, I'm going to put 1 in each chain 2, and then I'm going to end with a slip stitch on the very end. Okay? So to put a slip stitch in each row, here's row 1, and then of course here's row 2, here's row 3, and then we're going to skip down to the top of that single crochet. 4, I'm going into the chain 2 right here where we skipped. This is a little tough, especially if you crocheted your chain tightly. You don't really want to because we're working into it here. Slip stitch here into that one, that's 5. Here's the 6th slip stitch, and then one last one just to tie it all together into the side there. And you should have 7 slip stitches. And you see how nice and rounded that really made it. So that is how yours should look. So here's the point where we are going to attach our wooden ring. We've made our slip stitches here, and now we are going to attach the ring. This is the final step, and it is a little difficult, so make sure you pay close attention. You're going to chain 1 after you've made your 7 slip stitches and turn, and we're going to work back into those slip stitches. We are going to be working into the front loops only of those slip stitches. So just so you know, you're going to take your wooden ring and slide it between your working yarn and your hook. You're going to put your hook into the wooden ring and yarn over and pull through. We just slip stitched into that wooden ring. Now you're going to take your wooden ring and move it out of your way to the right. Turn to where you can see those slip stitches. Put your hook into the front loop only of the next slip stitch, the very first slip stitch I should say. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Put your wooden ring back between your hook and your working yarn. We're going to put your hook into the wooden ring, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. Essentially, we are anchoring the ring to the front loop only and single crocheting into the ring at the same time. So now, we're going to do the anchor. We're going to move the ring out of the way, put your hook into the front loop only of the next slip stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Push the ring back between your working yarn and your hook. Put your hook into the wooden ring, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. Just going to repeat this process till you get through the 7th one, okay? So push your ring back out of the way, put your hook into the front loop only of the next slip stitch, yarn over, pull up 1 loop. Put your ring between your working yarn and your hook, put your hook into the ring, yarn over, and go through both loops on your hook. So we're going to make our anchor stitch, yarn over, and then our single crochet through the ring. So your anchor stitch is done at the base of the wooden ring without the wooden ring. Here's my anchor stitch. I'm going below the wooden ring and I'm not going into it yet. I'm going into that front loop only. Yarn over, pull up a loop. That was my anchor. Now I'm going to finish my single crochet into the ring. 2 more times. Anchor stitch, single crochet into the ring. I've got 1 more. Make sure you're going in the front loop only. Yarn over, draw up a loop, put your hook through the ring, yarn over, pull through 2. You should have 7 on your hook, 7 single crochets. And then you're just going to, fasten off. So this is the back side. It's not super pretty, but it doesn't look ugly. But when you turn it over, this is the front side. And when we crocheted into the front loop only, that left the back loop here to give us this nice ribbing that's present here. So now your coaster is pretty well complete. You will take your tail here and weave it into the stitches on both ends, and you are done. I think it looks really nice. And again, I want to reiterate, if you use acrylic yarn, you're going to want to put something underneath like felt to absorb any moisture, because you do want this to be functional. If you have the Bernat Home Maker Dec, this would make a great hot pad or trivet, because it's pretty thick yarn. It's really absorbent, and it'd be super cute to just hang somewhere when you need it. I think it's adorable, and it's not knitted because I'm not real good at knitting, but it's pretty close to that design that I saw and really liked. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. This is the first section. I'm going to move on to the next. Okay, so this is the second part of the coaster tutorial. Basically, what I'm going to do is show you the 3 ways that you can do the same coaster, okay? So the first way we just finished was the linen stitch with the ring, and this is the second way. I crocheted this 5x5 coaster using double strands of Lion brand Comfy Cotton. This is a size 3 yarn, so it's very thin. I do not recommend using it single strand because you do want this to be absorbent. And so I followed the same exact stitch pattern that I did for this linen stitch, the foundation and then the drop stitch row following, and then the repeating pattern as for this one. So I just created it to be the same size, which, if you remember, is stitch multiples of 2 until it measures about 5 inches across and 5 inches tall. The second thing that I want to show you real quickly, this is probably the easiest one, was how I do my tassels. If you're familiar with my beaded tassel tutorial that I do for my bobble bag, you already know how to do this. But for those of you who haven't watched that yet, I use monofilament illusion cord to attach my beaded tassels. You could realistically use yarn if you don't have this. And if you wanted to substitute one of the yarns for the monofilament cording with these beads, you realistically could. The assortment bucket that I get these beads in, it does not specify the size of the beads. If I had to guess, I would say they're probably 10 to 12 millimeter size. So you could realistically use a smaller bead, but I'm not sure I would go much bigger. So what I do is I take a strip of the monofilament cord, or if you are using the yarn, a piece of the yarn, and you're going to want to cut a piece of the monofilament cord about, I don't know, 6 inches. Doesn't have to be big. And then you are going to grab a crochet hook, doesn't really matter what size, and go into a corner. I mean, realistically, you could put them anywhere. If I was going into the corner though, I would be going directly in here. I'm just going to show you how to do it. So you're going to go ahead and loop the monofilament cord through, in this case, your stitch, but normally I would be doing it in a corner, and then I would double knot it. I'm going to cut this off later because I don't plan to keep this tassel, so I'm going to do mine kind of loose, but I would double knot it and then take your wooden bead. I'm going to make them the same length. Take your wooden bead and slide that on both strands up till it abuts the coaster. And then I used double strands again of my yarn, and I made a tassel about 3 inches, well, technically 6 inches long, and I only wrapped it 4 times. So this is about 3 inches here. So if you were doing a piece of cardboard, I'd do it 3 to 3.5 inches, and I only wrap it 4 times per tassel. You don't want this to be really large because you don't want to add too much. And then of course I cut the bottom, and then I take the monofilament cord or your yarn, piece of yarn, it depends on what you're doing, and stick it between the 2 pieces. So open up your monofilament or your yarn to where it's open and set your tasseled strands down inside underneath your bead. And then I knot this monofilament cord over those strands a bunch of times, like 5 times, because I don't want it going anywhere. Since I'm only doing this for demo, I'm going to stop right there, and usually I would cut it to the quick, just about, maybe not quite, and get it going straight here. You could even pull your bead down on the tassel ends to bring them together, and then I cut it where I feel I want the length, which looks to be about 2 inches, honestly. And then that's it. Your tassel's ready. I mean, realistically, it would still be cute if you did one, you know, all the way around. But that's the simplest one out of all the 3 that I'm going to show you. So there's that one. And for the next one, you are going to need a coaster that is 5 inches wide, but only 4 inches long. And the reason that I took an inch off of the height is because as you weave your yarn in and out of the grid here, of the chain 1 spaces, it grows. So this particular coaster that I weaved yarn in through was actually 5 by 5 when I started. So literally it was this size when I started, and it grew by 1.5 inches as I weaved in those ends there. If I were you, depending on what size you wanted it to be, it doesn't usually grow this way, but it definitely grows this way. So just keep that in mind. Also, you will need either a piece of cardboard that is 10 inches wide or a ruler. And another thing that I would do differently about this one is I wouldn't have put so many strands of the fun fur in it, this fuzzy yarn. I mean, it's still okay, but this is the back side. It looks awful. It's just too much. So for this one, this one that I'm going to show you how to do, I am going to use fewer strands of the fun fur. I may only do it every third or so row. So that is my regret. You could really use any eyelash yarn. It does not have to be a furry yarn. It could be a ribbon yarn, and I'll show you. So this is one of the yarns that I'm weaving in and out. It's a pom-pom yarn. Unfortunately, I've had it for about 8 to 10 years, and I don't remember where I got it. And it didn't have the sleeve when I started using it for this project. So I do apologize. I don't know what your stash looks like, but I have a lot of crazy yarns that I've bought in thrift stores over the years or on sale, major sales at yarn stores, and I couldn't walk away from them. So this was probably very cheap, and I thought, well, I don't know what I'm gonna use it for, but I'm gonna use it for something. Well, today is its day. And then I also have some ribbon yarn. That is the yarn that it kind of looks like it has a bit of roving yarn weaved in there, or a bit of wool, I guess. So it's really interesting yarn. It was very expensive. I do remember that, and I think I got it on sale. So I'm going to use this today to weave in and out. I actually did use it on this one, and I think it looks really nice. Another yarn that I used was just a Caron Simply Soft in black. It doesn't have to be that particular brand. It's just what I had in my scrap bin. So that is what I'm going to be weaving in and out. And I also, like I said, used the black Fun Fur. I've had it forever and ever, but I'm pretty sure it's Lion brand. And I'm not going to do it every row, but maybe one every third row, to give it a little bit of fuzz, but not much. And really where I regret it, apart from it seems really fuzzy here, it's not too bad on this side. It's terrible on this side, but it's not too bad on this side. The fringe that I tied on the outside, it is way too hairy for me. I don't like it. If you like it, go for it. I mean, I've got this Fun Fur in every color under the sun. I'm not even playing. I have so much Fun Fur. When it was on clearance, I just bought it all in every color. So I'm probably going to be using it for other ones, but not in this excessive way that I used it for this one, because it's just too much. It's not classy. It's overdone. So because this is so fuzzy, I'm probably just going to put a few strands in the whole coaster. So I'm going to cut it separately. And like I said before, I don't have a piece of cardboard that's 10 inches in length. So what I'm going to do is just cut like, I don't know, I'll start with 3 strands of this that's 10 inches long. This stuff is super messy, so be prepared if you're using it, which you probably already know if you've had any experience with it. I do like it in this, just maybe not in such large quantity. And then I'm going to take the 3 strands of the other yarn that I have, and I'm also going to cut, I've got them all held together just for ease of use here, and I'm also going to cut them in 10-inch increments, and I'm going to set them to the side. Another reason that I think this is easier than using cardboard is because after you've cut it on the cardboard, you have to separate the strands, whereas if you cut it separately, you don't have to separate it. So I feel like it's less work to do it in groupings like this. So now you will grab your coaster and, oh, and I want to mention another thing. I can't remember if I mentioned it. On this particular weaving one, I didn't do the drop stitch on the first row because we are actually weaving into the chain 1 spaces. And when you do that drop stitch into the chain, the foundation chain, you are eliminating that chain 1 space. So for this particular coaster, you're going to want to actually not do the drop stitch, but work the pattern as you usually would. So get your hook out. It doesn't really matter what size. I'm using the same size that I used to make the coaster, and put it around the post of your single crochet there and into the chain 1 spaces. And we are just going to grab the end here and snag it like you would a tassel and pull it through. Now I am going to leave a bit of a tail here, and I'm going to go to the next 2 chain 1 spaces and snag it through. There might be an easier way of doing this, but I'm not aware of it if there is, because this yarn is kind of stretchy. So, and you've got to be careful with this, because as you pull the yarn through, it's going to get real tight and want to draw in, and you don't really want that to happen. And now here I am at the end. There's only 1 chain 1 space, so I'm going to go kind of in between there. There's really not a space, but I'm going to make a space and pull it through. All right, you're going to want to pull away just to kind of make sure that you don't get it too tight. And what I do, I mean, technically this is pretty tight. It's probably not going to come out. If you wanted to leave it loose, you realistically could. But what I'm going to do is take the thicker ribbon yarn and go underneath and pull it through. And I'm just going to tie kind of loosely, because you don't want to push it inward. You don't want to change the shape of your coaster. And just leave the tails hanging there. I'm going to do that on both sides. And I'm kind of going through the stitch there. I mean, realistically, you could take it under, but it might mess with the pattern. At the end, you may want to flip it over and decide, you know, which side you like better. So you kind of want both sides to look good, in my opinion, in case you like one side more than the other. And really, that's it. And see how tight that is? I might try to pull out that knot a little bit. There we go. You don't want it to be too tight. I don't know if you've ever paid attention to weaving, but I highly recommend you look it up on YouTube. And, you know, just look and see the different things that they do. It is amazing. You really could take this and be really artistic with it. You could weave in a certain color this way and then stop, and then weave in another color this way and stagger it. You could make shapes, like a diamond shape, by weaving over and under more than one stitch. You really could take this a bunch of different ways. And so honestly, there's so much potential when you've got this grid here to work with. For the next one, we're going to do the exact same thing, and actually, technically, I skipped a row here. I should have done this one first, but I got ahead of myself. Now really, you can weave more than just yarn in here. You could get ribbon. I know Walmart for sure, and I'm sure other craft stores. I shop at Walmart a lot because I am in a rural area, and that's about all I've got, unless I want to drive quite a distance. So forgive me for my constant Walmart ramblings, but that's just about my only supply store. I have to drive pretty far to get anything else. So anyways, I know Walmart carries a ribbon that has pom-poms, little tiny pom-poms, and that would be really cute. Through it, you could add just other types of mediums. I know that Hobby Lobby for sure carries a roving yarn, and they have little bags of it, and roving yarn is used a lot in weaving, and it's fluffy yarn, for lack of a better term. It kind of looks a lot like this, only there's more of it, and you can really make some cool stuff with it. A similar type acrylic yarn, at least I think it does similar in appearance, is homespun. Lion brand homespun yarn has a fluffy appearance when it gets kind of worn, I guess, for lack of a better term. I wouldn't recommend putting a brush through it, but you just about could. It's real fuzzy. So you could probably, if you've got some homespun on you, that would be a good option too to try. Remember what I said, don't do it too tight because it'll draw in. I'm going to do one more row and then I'm going to leave you to it. I'm going to show you when I'm done. On this third row, I'm going to take out the black strand and add a fun fur. And I think this will add just the right amount of fuzz. Just occasional fuzz is good. So I'm going to come to about where those other ends are. And I'm putting my hook in the chain one spaces just to reiterate what I'm doing. Alright, so I'm going to keep on going in this fashion, weaving in the chain one spaces, including this last space. And like I said, I didn't do the drop stitch, and this is what this would look like if I hadn't done the drop stitch. So you see how that does such a better job doing either drop stitch than these holes here. So anyways, I'm going to continue on and meet you back when I'm done. Okay, you guys, so I am done with the weaving, and I want you to just see how much this thing grew. So this was 5 inches this way and 4 inches this way before I added the weaving. And as you can see, it's 5 inches by 5 inches, the actual square anyways. So I'm really excited that that worked out. I think this is a good balance. I also wanted to give you a tip. When you are trimming your edges, I would not trim the whole thing as if it was a tassel. I would trim like separate, like doing one at a time, two at a time at tops, because you don't want it to look like you gave it a haircut, okay? You still want it to look free. A tip that I will give you is I sell my items, so I'm always thinking about the business side of the items that I make. Realistically, this is not a very lucrative project. Time is money, and this was very time consuming. This would be a great gift, or if you have customers who are kind of, for lack of a better term, wealthy and prefer to spend a little more, then maybe they would be willing to spend a little more on coasters. But if you think about it on the business side, people aren't really wanting to spend a lot of money on coasters. So if you use this to sell. Just keep that in mind, that they are very time consuming and you may not make that much money for your effort. Now, I am going to be using this technique in a bag. People are more willing to spend a little more money on things they can wear. So if you like the technique, maybe consider using it elsewhere. So I will be doing a bag very soon with a very similar concept into a bag, and I will make it a tutorial. So be looking for that if you like this technique and you sell your items. Otherwise, it would be a great housewarming gift, or if somebody's getting married, they like boho. Perfect for that. I can't see people spending more than $20 to $25 for a set of 4. To me, that's not worth it because this took me like an hour. So that's 4 hours. I like to charge at least $10 an hour for my work plus the cost of materials. Nobody is going to spend $45 on a set of 4 coasters. So to me, this is not lucrative. So just keep that in mind. I like to throw those tips in there because I am a business owner and I know a lot of you are too. I haven't weaved in my ends yet, but I really think that this is a very, versatile pattern. Simple, beachy, boho. I like it. You can go a lot of different directions. You can make it rainbow, anything. Just keep in mind that to be functional, you probably need to put something underneath them if it's not an absorbent material like acrylic. So I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. Please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button that is in the corner there. And I hope to see you again soon.